Hi, I'm Erik Jones, and you're listening to Verse by Verse. In the second half of James chapter 2, the Apostle James dedicated 13 verses to the topic of faith, but from a very specific perspective. Instead of focusing on positive examples of faith, as Hebrews 11 does, in this chapter, James writes about faith from the perspective of what it is not. You see, James was challenging the idea that faith alone is sufficient for salvation. In other words, it seems people were already believing that all you need is faith in God and Jesus Christ. That's it. What's interesting is that his clearly written explanation of why faith alone is false has not prevented people over the ensuing centuries from teaching that idea. By twisting certain passages, mainly in Paul's writings, much of Protestantism has accepted a form of that belief, sometimes labeled sola fide, the Latin phrase for faith alone. One of the greatest advocates of sola fide, Martin Luther, was very critical of the book of James, mainly because of chapter 2. In 1522, he famously referred to the book as an epistle of straw and viewed it as having nothing of the nature of the gospel about it. For those of us who have read and deeply benefited from the book of James, that may be all we need to know about the character and perspective of Martin Luther. Perhaps the most direct and memorable line of these 13 verses in James chapter 2 is found in verse 17. That line concisely sums up James's point. Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. In other words, if our faith isn't demonstrated through our actions, it is dead, worthless, good for nothing. After making that strong, direct statement, James demonstrated it with a very striking, attention-grabbing example. And this is actually our verse of focus for today. James 2, verse 19. He wrote, "You believe that there is one God. You do well. Even the demons believe and tremble." James was highlighting how ludicrous the idea of sola fide is. The demons, those fallen angels who are God's avowed enemies, being so twisted that they've dedicated their existence to obstructing his plan, they all believe. They believe in God. In fact, they are so knowledgeable of his power and authority that they tremble in fear of him. But that's a terrified fear, not a humble, obedient fear. They are not God's enemies because they somehow question his existence. They know with absolute certainty he exists. They know he created them. They know he's all-powerful. They've all seen and at one time worked under him. Their problem is that, despite knowing he exists, they disagree with him. They believe in him, but they do not believe him. They reject his will. They reject his law. They reject him. In fact, there are many examples in the Gospels of Jesus encountering demons who directly acknowledged who he was. One example is Luke 4, verse 34. In that case, the demon said, "I know who you are, the Holy One of God." He said that to Jesus Christ. Yet even though this demon verbally acknowledged that Jesus was the Holy One of God, he continued to live in total opposition to Jesus Christ. For the demons, their faith does not translate to good works. Their belief in him means nothing and does nothing. This verse demonstrates a powerful truth that every one of us should take to heart. Just believing in or having faith in God the Father and Jesus Christ means absolutely nothing if it does not impact the way we live. If we believe in God with all our hearts, yet live our lives in opposition to his revealed will, we are, in fact, no better than the demons. This reality should motivate us to build the opposite of dead faith. It should motivate us to dedicate our lives to building living faith. Faith that directly impacts the way we live. Faith that is manifested in good works. Faith that produces a life characterized by righteousness.
If you've been enjoying Verse by Verse and want to help the show grow, here's what you can do to get the word out. Wherever you're listening, make sure to subscribe. If you're on a platform that accepts reviews and ratings, those can both make a big difference in helping other people find us. Verse by Verse is a Life, Hope, and Truth podcast. Check out the show notes to find more free content, like videos, articles, and booklets in our Learning Center.